Hey everyone, welcome back to Keto and Crime. Today we are back with the third Purge movie. We are spending this Halloween covering the Purge franchise. And today we are back with the 2016 end of the original trilogy known as Purge election year. This came out in 2016, right in time for the very tumultuous election that happened that year. And again, it is helmed by James DeMonaco, written and directed. So without further ado, let's dive in. So the movie starts in 2022. So we've done a time warp backwards from Purge Anarchy, which took place in our current year of 2023. Remember, this is an alternate universe for the United States. And we see a young Charlie Roan, who is played phenomenally by Elizabeth Mitchell, and her entire family being held hostage by a lone purger who is both psychologically and physically torturing them, basically making Charlie's mother do a Sophie's choice as to which one of her children will be allowed to live. And then it cuts to black. And then 18 years later, so now we have leaped forward to 2040, and I will address that the timeline doesn't really make sense here, but she is now a U.S. Senator, very popular, running for president and on the platform of ending the Purge. And we see her teamed up with her now head of security, Sergeant Leo Barnes, our hero from Purge Anarchy, is back and now in gainful employment as Senator Roan's head of security. And this is where the timeline becomes a little jumpy, because Leo Barnes was evidently in his late 20s, 30s in Anarchy, and with the 17-year time jump, he still seems to look the same as he did in Anarchy. So you just have to suspend your disbelief a little bit. We also kind of see Charlie Roan on the campaign trail. She's very, very popular. She's a woman of the people. And then we cut to the new founding fathers in the White House discussing her candidacy and deciding that at this year's Purge, they will remove the stipulation that politicians of level 10 or higher cannot be touched, in hopes that she herself will be purged and she will be a target of the many, many government kill squads that go out on Purge night. We then cut to Washington, D.C., where we meet Joe Dixon. He is a deli owner. He is played by 𝗙𝗀𝗄𝗏 Williamson, who is one of the best character actors ever. He is most well known for his portrayal of Bubba in Forrest Gump, and later on in Con Air. One of the best character actors I've ever seen. I'm a huge fan. And with him is his assistant Marcos, a recent Mexican immigrant that works with him in his deli and has become one of his closest friends. He is portrayed here by Joseph Julian Sorero. And then we kind of see his daily challenges of being a small business owner, the high taxes. While he's there, we meet a bevel of different characters, including Lainey Rutger, who is played by Betty Gabriel, most well known for her portrayal of the maid in Get Out, Jordan Peele's excellent horror film, also by Blumhouse, and a pair of teenage girls that enter and try to shoplift the place, only to be stopped by Lainey, who used to be a high-ranking gang member on the streets of D.C., and she tells them to move along. She has pretty much taken on a pacifist type of life and actually runs an illegal ambulance service that operates on Purge night to help those that have been caught outside and wounded. So the girls mock both Lainey and Joe Dixon until they tell them they will come back and settle the score in just a few hours when the Purge begins. Then we cut to TV reports of Purge tourists, purgers from different countries, Europe, Canada, who are coming over here to kill and maim and join in all the great fun. And then finally, Joe receives a call from his insurance company saying they are tripling his Purge insurance just in time for the purge, and he can't afford it, so he makes the decision to be rooftop Asian. If you remember during the LA riots, how the Korean store owners in Koreatown in Los Angeles took to guarding their own buildings when the insurance and police offered no help. So this kind of harks back to that, and he will stand on his own roof with a weapon and protect his livelihood. Marcus says that he will stay with him, but he tries to convince Marcus to go home. But after Marcus sneaks up to join Joe on the roof as the purge begins, Marcus takes a shot that repels the shoplifting girls that have come back to make good on their promise, and Joe decides that it would be great to have Marcus by his side. Then we cut to Charlie Roan's townhouse in downtown D.C., where Leo Barnes is trying to convince her that she needs to go to a safe house or get out of the country, because if she is killed, then all bets are off for the election. She says that she's a woman of the people, and she cannot be seen as an elite that hides behind fancy security systems, and she will stay at home. He then says, well, you have private security. She says, I understand that, but I'm not going to be that much different than my constituents. So she is a unicorn in that she is an honest politician that is really there for the good of the people. So we see Leo Barnes taking all of the precautions that he can, unaware that people on his very security team are being paid by the new founding fathers to take out Senator Roan. And he finds out that one of them allows a paramilitary force led by this installment's big baddie to come in and kill Roan, and they also detonate a bomb. However, because Leo acted fast, he was able to pull Charlie into an underground tunnel and lead her out, where he helps them make their escape. Then things move very, very quickly, as this is one of the fastest moving Purge movies ever. The action turns up a few streets where Charlie and Leo are running to find shelter, and they are attacked by those very Purge tourists that were on television earlier and taken hostage. However, Joe and Marcos, who sees what's going on from the top of Joe's store, come down and rescue them and bring them into the store to find shelter. Joe is and so is Marcos, a huge fan of Charlie's politics, and tell her that she needs to take Florida to win the election. When has that not been true? So even in this universe, Florida, super important. And then while they're there, those same teenage shoplifters come back with reinforcements, saws, and an attempt to break into the store. They began a pummeling of the store, in which Joe and Marcus go back up to try to protect their business, but then realize that they have a new mission as protecting Senator Roan. So they barricade themselves in the store as the girls attempt to break in. Joe sends a message to Lainey, who is out in her ambulance, and she returns and again becomes her former persona when she was a gang member on the streets, 𝗧𝗏𝗄𝗏, and basically takes out all of the girls with a shotgun and her ambulance. So she's a badass chick. She then takes Charlie, Joe, Marcos, and Leo into their ambulance, and they attempt to make a run for a safer area. They are then assaulted by helicopters, all sorts of people working for the NFFA to find and kill Charlie. While running, they are tracked by a helicopter, and Leo Barnes realizes that the bullet he took for Charlie back at the house was a tracking bullet. And so while they're going along, Lainey helps him remove the bullet and in an attempt to toss it outside the ambulance. While stopped, the ambulance is approached by a bunch of Crips, gang members, and Joe, who used to be one, recognizes their whistles and their call signs, and he gives them the same sign from inside the ambulance. That causes the Crips to stand down. They open the door. They have a wounded compadre who they just want medical attention for. The group agrees to help him if they will help them deviate the paramilitary group tracking them in the helicopter, who also happens to be a bunch of neo-Nazis. The Crips are very happy to help them, and they take the tracking bullet from Leo and lead the government operatives on a wild goose chase. And finally, at the end, the leader of the paramilitary force can only hear the screams of agony and death from his last few members on the tracking team as the Crips take their revenge. Laney then drives them to an underground refuge underneath one of the overpasses in an old Washington tunnel. These were tunnels that was supposedly built by the old founding fathers in the case that Washington ever fell to the British or any other foreign force where people could escape. And deep down in these tunnels, we find our old buddy Dante Bishop from both The Purge and The Purge Anarchy, portrayed again by 𝗬𝗏𝗁, who he and Leo Barnes are now one of two that have appeared in all the Purge movies, in addition to the announcer of the Purge sirens. And she sees that they are housing the poor, the middle class that cannot afford a whole lot of protection, and protecting them from the NFFA kill squads. She also realizes that in addition to them protecting, they are also going on the offensive. This is an offshoot of Carmelo's group from Anarchy, and they are planning to go to a local cathedral where the high players, remember this is Washington, D.C., the high players of the NFFA are doing their annual Purge Mass, where they sacrifice, literally, poor people to their whatever god they worship. And they are going there to take out the 1% in one fell swoop and hopefully end the Purge in the NFFA's reign. Charlie tries to convince them that they shouldn't do that they can't be like the NFFA, they have to be better. Sounds like a lot of, the people today in our political landscape that are too nice to fight back. She's got a little bit of that, which I think is a mistake. And basically Leo decides that he should move Charlie again. They leave. They are actually ambushed, and she is taken by the NFFA and taken to this very cathedral where they suspect they're going to sacrifice her. So Leo goes to Dante and says that he should turn this assassination mission into a rescue mission. He agrees, and so they take those very tunnels to the cathedral, where a shootout ensues, and Charlie is rescued, and a couple of high-ranking members of the NFFA, including their sitting president, are killed. However, before it's all said and done, we lose some good people in that Joe Dixon is killed and Dante is killed in the ensuing battle in the cathedral. And then we jump forward to 2 months where Marcos and Laney are renovating Joe's store since Joe left it to Marcos, and they watch the election coverage on the television where it says that Roan has won in a landslide, and the first thing she will do is an executive order ending the Purge. And then it ends with some kick-ass music and reports that NFFA supporters are rioting and burning cities all across the country. And we fade to black. And so, with that being said, let's jump into this discussion. Welcome to Keto and Crime, and you know what time it is. It's time for Friends on Film, and I have two of my very best friends here, Brentley from Dangerous Rhetoric and Brian from the Front Porch Conservative. We are moving on with the third movie in the original Purge trilogy, Purge Election Year. As you saw from the summary I just did, it went bigger, bolder, and is no longer subtly political. It's overtly in your face political. Came out in 2016, directed by James DeMonaco and written by James DeMonaco, and hit right around one of the most turbulent elections the U.S. ever saw in November of 2016. So, Brentley, first thoughts on the movie?
It was very similar to Anarchy. It struck me that we were doing this constant, last time I mentioned how it's like fire pan, or you're out of the frying pan into the fire. You see a lot of that. It's almost like a chase film, like Taken, or like another action movie where you follow a character, a group of characters, as they are relentlessly pursued from the antagonists, which in this case is the NFFA or purgers, basically the environment. So it's very much like a horror movie that's again, people versus environment. But the overt political nature of it was interesting. I liked how it went big, it went national. It gave you, they've been building this story basically for the past 2 films, and now we finally see it in the third one where it's sort of unveiled and in your face. And like now there's finally public sentiment against the purge, and she sort of becomes the embodiment of that at the political stage and running for president. And it's very clear that they're going to try to kill her.
Did you notice that Charlie Roan is one populist, one independent populist against a uniparty? How familiar is that in our own politics?
I mean, she's like an outsider.
Exactly. And somebody that's a bull in a china shop, kind of thing. Brian, what were your first thoughts?
Well, like the other 2 films, I genuinely enjoyed it. The thing that the director and the writers for the Purge films, I love how they weave certain things in as far as like a familiarity. For example, there are recurring characters in all these films. I mean, you've got our good friend Dante Bishop, who's back in this film. You have
Leo Barnes.
Thank you. You got Leo,
the Punisher.
Yeah, thank you. Had a brain fart there. It's been a long week already. Yeah,
I was glad that they brought him back.
Yeah,
me too.
He's a great character.
And so you've got the familiarity of characters. You've got the familiarity of different storylines, sort of like merging into one thing, and then it moves forward together. I mean, for example, you have the political angle with Senator Charlie Roan and Leo, and then you've got the gift shop. The deli scene. You got the deli characters, which is Laney, and you've got Joe Dixon, etc. And they just kind of merge together. And the other thing that I always find interesting is the way the film writes in irony and redemption. Is there's always the irony of all these horrific, horrible scenes, and then somehow out of that comes redemption, either for individuals or for groups. And you see a lot of that same thing here, particularly for Dante later on in the film, which we can get to that. But yeah, I mean, overall, I found the film to be very good. The other thing I found about this one, maybe more so than the others, is not the introduction really, but like certain humorous moments, like near the end. I mean, for example, like where we're fist bumping each other over the fact that you just racked a guy in his coconuts. Well deserved, might I add. He had it coming. So yeah, I thought the humor
satisfying,
in the film was
very satisfying moment for the audience there.
Yeah, and the one line we were talking about backstage, and I don't know who wants to go for this. The introduction of the character Irish Eyes. They're sitting around the deli, and someone says, "What do you say about that?" I'm sorry, I wasn't listening to you. I was thinking about waffles and pussy. I died laughing when we got to that. I went, "Oh my god!"
Comedic relief, very important in horror films and in films that deal with serious topics. So
yeah.
The other thing, and I'll make it quick, is that the horrific scenes are the ones that kind of blow my mind. I mean, for example, there's someone in the street covered in blood, very muscular. He says, "I am the baddest person in this city tonight.
I am God. I am vengeance.
I am God. I am vengeance." And I'm like, the other lady who's just sitting there singing some kind of like a lullaby while a corpse burns in front of her. And I'm like,
the guillotine scene where they drive by and people are just getting like guillotined with that top down lighting.
Oh yeah. It's just, or the hanging bodies in the tree, like circling around like something out of a baby's bassinet. Yeah.
The Wall Street guy that was hung from the top of the stock exchange there in DC, and it had something about for our pensions or something. Evidently, some hedge fund manager had dwindled away somebody's pension. Lots of things that are relatable, and it went international. These guys behind me, these are Purge tourists.
That I
thought was weird.
Yeah.
I was like, I almost thought it was not quite believable. But then again, we do have mercenaries that travel around the world and are paid to engage in conflicts like Ukraine and in the Middle East. So, but like the fact that they were just like normal people, like kids, like in their 20s, being like, "Oh, we're going to America to purge." Like I was just like, really, guys?
And The only ones that spoke were people with obvious Eastern European accents. I don't know if that was like a dig at Russians or somebody, but Russians get a lot of bad rap for no reason. I mean, I know that there's bad people. The government of
Cold
Russia
War
is not so
vibes.
good, but I have friends in Russia that I game with, and they're great people. They would never do that.
Yeah, Russians are just people like anybody else anywhere else.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a really good film. I mean, much like the others, I was very satisfied with it. There were some things I thought they left hanging, which I never quite understood, but we can get into that a little bit later in the film,
Yeah,
or a little bit later in
absolutely.
the presentation. Excuse me.
Well said. Went global. Let's talk about the characters. Joe Dixon, played by Williamson, one of the great character actors of our generation. Bubba Gump from Forrest Gump, and he also
That's where I
played.
recognized him from. I was like,
Yeah, he also played. God, I can't remember the name of the prisoner, but he was the one prisoner that was helping Nicolas Cage and Con Air, and protected.
Oh, that's
oh
right.
right, yeah.
And protected the female security guard from getting assaulted. The one they were trying to get his insulin. So
Yeah, I
he's a
remember that.
great character actor, and he shines in this. When you
Oh,
talk about
absolutely.
a redemption arc, he goes from totally disenfranchised with the whole American dream, the whole American system, to totally dying for it in the end, dying for the
Yeah.
hope of it in the end.
Yep.
One of my favorite characters. And then Marcos, his buddy that he worked with, his business partner, that was a recent Mexican immigrant. Great people. And one of my favorites, Lainey, La Puerta Moreta. She was awesome.
Oh yeah, when the two young shoplifters in Joe's deli recognize her and they're like, "Oh, you were a badass back in the day. What happened to you? Care to find out?"
Yeah.
And it's like, give the
And
candy back and apologize to the man.
She was in Get Out. She
Yeah,
was
she
one
was
of the
Georgina.
mind-washed.
Yeah, she was the maid, Georgina.
The maid, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And she's in another one of Blumhouse's horror films too. She's becoming quite a scream queen, and I'm happy to see her in
She's
anything that
great.
she does.
I mean, her acting is just so on point. Like, you really believe it. She plays like a cute, badass bitch very well.
She reminded me of a very young Angela Bassett.
Yeah,
She
in
does.
her, in her looks. I was like, really? I was like, no, it's not her, but it is. God, doesn't it look like her?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
the
then
other thing.
fact. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, and the fact she went from gang leader to running an illegal ambulance on Purge night, just driving around and helping anybody. I love it.
It really shows you that the character is good-natured and, like going around helping people. Like that. It's like she's saving the cat, sort of. Like, if people are familiar with that trope, it's like the writers tell you a lot about the character by showing you doing them something, generous or kind, or conversely showing you, doing something like, torturing a cat. So you get the idea that it's a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of show don't tell happening with these characters.
Exactly. And what were you saying, Brian? I'm so sorry.
No, talking about characters. At the very beginning of the movie, it was to me one of the creepiest parts of the film, where you see, I think it was like 10 or 18 years earlier, where Senator Charlie Roan's family was murdered at the hands of a purger, and that guy in that moment was one of the creepiest purge guys I think I've seen in all three of these films we've done so far.
The opening,
when he's playing Parliament as the song before he finally takes you out of this world. Well, I had a hard time putting together this playlist. I had to find one song that would really get your emotions going, before we decide what to do with you. And I'm thinking, you are an evil mofo. You are bad.
And then made the mom make Sophie's choice.
Yeah.
Which one of your kids lives?
Well, it goes back to that very first film, the very first Purge, where Lena Headey, they're looking at her going, okay, you just decide who's going to live and die. It's like, damn.
Yeah.
The other thing I found interesting was the interactions between Leo and Senator Charlie. It's like,
I wanted them to get it on so bad.
You see, when she invited him for the drink, I'm sitting there going, y'all been is the whole security detail thing taking on more than we understand in that term normally? I mean,
The bodyguard.
How much bodyguarding are we doing here? Exactly. It's like
no, Leo is very professional. Very professional.
Yeah. It's water, Leo. Oh, okay.
Well, then all through the thing, I just wanted them to kiss. There were so many moments where they were just face to face and close and very emotional. I'm like, if you kiss her, you'll feel better. You know,
it's like, well, at the end when she walks out of the voting booth and she's starting to walk away and just kind of like lightly brushes the suit coat, the arm of his suit coat. And I'm thinking, this is going to happen somewhere down the line. This will happen, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought they were the characters to me were very well developed. You felt like there's present, there's past with them, and you can believe that. I mean, when the kid is up on the roof with Joe, and he says, and he shoots the earlobe off of one of those bad bitches. Yeah. Joe looks like, you want to tell me about that? Hey man, living in Juarez was like the Purge every day. And I'm like,
in my summary, I talk about how the fact that Joe and Marcos went up on top of to protect their business, and said that to me that harkens to the LA riots, the rooftop Koreans protecting their own shops.
Very similar.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then of course, when they try to kill Charlie Roan and Leo manages to the first time try to blow her up in her townhome, and I admire her for not going.
He was like, "What is this bitch doing staying in her house? Like, come on."
She's a candidate of the people. She was afraid it would lose her votes.
After they revoked the rule, you know, they had this rule previously in the previous Purge. It was like, you know, politicians, you know, were exempt from the Purge. You couldn't kill a politician because, you know, obviously that was
breakdown in government. Yeah.
And then they changed the rule. So it's like, honey,
they're after you.
Coming for your ass. Like
But he managed to pull her into an underground tunnel that supposedly George Washington and the founding fathers built tunnels all over Washington, D.C. to help citizens escape and them escape in the event of a foreign invasion.
Right.
And all these tunnels were all over the city, and then he gets her out of there and then takes the bullet, which ends up being a tracking bullet. Like you said, it was a very fast pace. They got one predicament to the other. They got away.
Like once that starts, like they have there's the setup, you know, in the beginning part where they introduce you to the new characters and show you, you know, what Leo's doing and you know, give you the context so that you understand, you know, like the weight of what's about to happen. And then it's just like, it's on and they're chasing this woman the entire time. And like, you're just like, don't kill the lady. Like she's the only good person. Like,
and then from there, they end up, you know, with the Purge tourists trying to kill them and saying all this freaky deaky stuff. And then
I'm sorry. I love how they always end up in this situation where it's like, they're going to die. They're going to die. They're surrounded. There's a knife on the neck. And then Saved by the Bell, like
and Marcos and Joe just shoots them all down, and because they happened to be on top of the roof and saw what was happening.
Right, they just happened to be close to Joe, and you know it's like and Saved by Joe. There was the other time where they were when they were in Joe's store, and they're like. They get attacked by, you know, everybody coming out. And then just at the last minute, you know, I can't remember her name now. She comes in the ambulance and like plows through half of them. Yeah.
Oh, I love it when she kills the final freaky deaky girl, the final shoplifting girl.
That whole sequence was amazing.
And just cocks the gun and says, La Puerto Muerto is back, bitches.
Yeah. And the look in her eyes after she said it, I'm like, oh, I do not want to mess with this woman. If I ever run into her, I do not want to mess with this woman. It's like, take what you want. I go in peace. I'm going that way, and I'll never see you again. Bye-bye.
She's great.
Oh, yeah. Very, very believable, the character.
Was anybody else freaked out by the teddy bear, the giant teddy bear? That was one of the attackers. That freaked me out so bad.
It's such a good Purge costume. But like the other thing is like not realistic at all, just for the film, because wearing a big mask like that, you do not want to engage in violence in a furry outfit like that. You can't see shit. You're hot. You can't hear anything.
I would not be engaging in what they do with any of these costumes. I might have a ski mask on or a very plain little Michael Myers kind of mask, but
I
all
don't think
this
I'd want
elaborate
anything covering
costuming.
my face,
No,
just to be able to hear and see everything
because
and like
it's
feel air
legal.
changes.
Why the
Like,
fuck do you need to? It's legal. Why the hell do you need to, have yourself covered?
I would
Yeah,
definitely have body armor and AK-47 and multiple sidearms.
Yeah.
yeah, you want the lightest kind of clothing, which allows you to breathe because you're going to get hot the whole damn
Real
night.
hot.
Oh, real
Running
hot.
around, dodging
Mhm.
bullets.
Exactly. The other thing I found really interesting was how the NFA, to me, especially the end of the church scene, felt like its own form of a Nazi rally. I
Yeah.
mean,
Very Nazi. Yeah.
yeah, they're sitting there in the church. They have these medallions and symbols on them, and it felt just so. I mean, without all the numbers and the theatricality of what you would have seen in the 1930s in Germany, it felt so much like a Nazi rally. You almost, I mean, the guy who's up there, that senator that's running against Charlie Roan's character, he's up there almost like a Goebbels or a
Mhm.
Himmler leading the rally before Hitler walks out on stage to give some speech, and it's like you're winding everybody up, and you're like, oh my god, just that was the one similarity to me that just kind of stuck out.
And this is where it was so overtly that how political ideology, whether you're on the hard left or the hard right, can become a deity, a religion.
Yeah.
And it just takes that to task. I mean,
Yeah, and the perversion of religion. It's
mm,
like, as some of the new founding fathers are walking up there to like put the knife into, Charlie Roan's character, they're singing "There is a fountain filled with blood drawn from Emmanuel's veins." I know that hymn very well.
mm.
And talk about two things diametrically the opposite of each other. This weird ass, ritualistic killing that's about to take place, and this great old hymn of the church. And I'm like, oh no, these two should never be in the same place together under any circumstances.
And then that chant, purge and purify, purge and purify. Just
We've seen a lot of
creepy.
chanting lately, haven't we?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And then of course, well, we skipped where we get to they're in the ambulance and they realize that Leo has a tracking bullet, and he's just going to get out and go somewhere else and leave them, and they won't let him. I said that's where she should have kissed him because she wouldn't let him
Right.
go. And so Lainey and him managed to get the bullet out of him, and then they get attacked by these Crips, by gang members that you think are going to purge them, and it turns out they're old friends of Joe because he used to be a Crip. And then they take the bullet in exchange for them helping their wounded friend and lead the neo-Nazis that are chasing them, the government operatives, to another place and dispose of them, which I thought was awesome.
Yeah, that was a nice little switcheroo there. And like the unexpected, like the way that they do it is very clever by having Joe have a backstory that we weren't aware of, but makes sense. That I love how he does like the little crypt whistle, and it's like,
yeah.
like, oh, okay, now they're disarmed. That's amazing.
Yeah, I thought I thought that was a very nice touch. And can we talk about the leader of this NFAA mercenary group, the tattooed headed
the
guy,
Confederate flags?
Derringer, I think is his name.
Yeah, very believable in that character. Very menacing.
Great henchman.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
You always have to have a henchman character. It's very important. You have the big bad, the main boss, but then he has to have like an underboss. So he was very good in that role. I thought the Confederate flags were a little. I was just like, they
as a Southerner. That's how non-Southerners use the Confederate flag. They use it as a symbol for hate.
True.
Yeah. Down here, people of all races, religions, creed have rebel flags. I live next door to some people, our neighbors are straight from Mexico. I mean, they're immigrants and they have rebel flags on their trucks. It does not mean to the true Southerners what you think it means.
Right. Well, they were trying to do the same thing with the "Don't Tread on Me" flag, the Gadsden flag.
Right.
And in some school, and there was a whole big brouhaha about it because I believe a young man had it on his backpack or had a T-shirt on with the Gadsden flag or something, and the teacher was like, "That's racist." And then there was a viral video. Like, mom came in and was basically like, "That goes back to the Revolutionary War. Like that's part of American culture and history. Like you as a teacher should really know that." Like I love watching her grill the teacher.
the rebel flag, as we know it, was a battle flag of a Virginia regiment.
Yeah.
And it stands for Southern pride. It stands for the rebellious spirit of America that we are constitutionally ordered by our founding fathers to overthrow tyrannical governments. And that's what the South attempted to do because they felt that the government at the time was tyrannical. And that's what it means. It's not for slavery. The average Southerner did not own slaves.
Exactly.
In the South, they were just poor middle class farmers that got drug into a war because they felt they were being trounced on.
Totally. Yep. No, but I thought that was interesting that they like used it like that in order to like associate, you know, the new founding fathers with like, you know, white supremacy, Confederate, whatever. It's like very Hollywood. It's like the trope that they're trying to. Yeah. They're trying to like create this like illusion. Have you seen the Patriots Front, people? Not to like totally go off topic.
No, I haven't. What?
The Patriots Front is this like group of feds basically that go around.
Oh, yes,
yeah.
Masks. They all have these uniforms. They like fly flags, and they're all like, you know, they're supposed to be like white nationalists, but like really they're just feds, and everybody calls them feds. And it just reminded me similar to the new founding fathers. Like, and this is kind of what the liberal Hollywood elite sees as, you know, the big enemy, you know, or at least like that's the illusion that Democrats keep trying to conjure, that there's this like big white supremacy conspiracy out there, which just struck me as like this movie is almost like a Democratic like sort of wet dream in a way. Like they would love to have this idea of having nights where we could just like do anything, and it's very BLM-y.
But to me, the new founding fathers more represent a liberal leftist elite, than a conservative elite.
But this is what they do. They reverse and project. So all of the crimes they're projecting onto the right, so that you know you have trouble being able to be like, wait, that's what you're actually doing.
Right. Your leftism, wokeism is a religion that you scream and you want to die on an altar and you want to pervert religions. That's what you're doing. The right is not doing that.
Yeah, I mean, the one line toward the end of the movie is like, we must stop her from taking away our freedoms. And I'm sitting here going, wait a minute.
They're talking about guns, obviously, but, you know, it's...
Well, but no, they're talking about killing.
Yeah. No, they are, but I think what the leftists make, we're talking about how, you know, right people, how us Americans scream about our Second Amendment rights.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry,
we like our guns around here.
We do.
And we use them.
No, ain't nothing wrong with that. You should have a gun. You should know how to use it. You should be able to defend yourself in case something happens and the police are not instantly available.
Yeah.
Maybe not so necessary in a major city, but then again, if there's a home invasion in your apartment, you like, you know, how long
you
does
have
it take them
react
5 minutes to get to you? Like,
you got seconds to react.
You got seconds, exactly. Like, this is what people don't understand about violence. It happens very fast.
Exactly. And if you could take away all the guns tomorrow, criminals would still have guns. Violent people would still have guns. You cannot stop it.
There's no taking away the guns either. Like, this is America. There's like 450 million guns in existence. Like, you can't just like make them go away, especially with the Second Amendment. So,
and I don't think the police would even try, at least in most places.
No, would you want to be that person?
Look what happened in New Mexico.
Imagine.
Look what happened in New Mexico. Look what happened in New Mexico. That the sheriff and what is it? The capital of New Mexico said he would not enforce that rule at all. No.
Yeah, and even after a federal judge upheld the governor's modified ban on weapons, you know, the sheriff of that county where the capital's at still said, nope, still ain't doing it. Not gonna, won't.
And now there's popular support for an impeachment of her, which should happen.
Exactly.
So anyway, off topic, but yeah, it's like Brentley said, they project it onto their political enemies, but it always reflects off and looks worse on them, in my opinion.
Oh, because we've seen that, right? You know, they're the ones in cities, you know, justifying these radical rallies where people just break the law en masse. And, you know, they basically have these teen takeovers, for example, happening in Chicago. There was one that happened in New York not too long ago. They're like quick viral social media things where a bunch of teenagers just like drop themselves into an area and it's mass chaos. You know, they're on bikes, they're on mopeds. You know,
they're robbing people. They're stealing from stores.
I think it was Philadelphia recently where they arrested like 20 people. Meatball.
Yeah.
Everybody gotta eat. honey, you don't need to eat no more. You need to go on a diet. Okay.
Yeah.
Bless your heart.
But yeah, and but like you said, the convergence of political ideology with religion, it's
Yeah.
just it's there. And then the good actions, well, it's all good action, but then when we meet Dante, who this is evidently an offshoot of Carmelo's resistance group, but
Yep.
Carmelo's nowhere to be
Yeah, what was
found.
with that? Like Carmelo just like,
I would love to have seen Carmelo again. I don't know if he's dead or he's leading another group. I mean, his group was in LA. This is Washington D.C. Maybe Dante
could be it.
is the block captain of that particular
you know what
branch.
else? Just really quick in the beginning of the film that kind of just drove me nuts was that when they scrolled past the iPhone, it had the play button on and the music was playing, and I was like, anybody that has a phone or it has like when you hit the play button and music plays, that button turns to a pause. I'm like, how did you miss that in the editing? Like, it just drove me nuts.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And then we, like I said, then we meet Angel, who is Dante's right-hand man. And then we get into what to me was the most infuriating part. What was your opinion on Charlie Roan not wanting to play dirty against the NFFA, who was obviously going to play dirty, had already tried to play dirty? I'll kick that to you first, Brian.
Okay, I can understand from the standpoint of making your character believable that she's wanting to play by the rules, be virtuous, be above it all, show that we are better than the thing that we are running against. On the other hand, and we can even equate this to current modern day, I don't see how any politician in one form or another doesn't slightly bend the rules to their advantage. The fact that she is to me, she's too pure of heart to be a politician in America. And I hate to say that because it speaks so badly of the current political state in America, where you expect your politicians to have a certain amount of dirty to them. But the fact that she was so above it all, and so, no, that's not believable. It's just not believable. Even if you're not going to engage in it, at least stand there and be willing to entertain the idea of doing it. She wouldn't even entertain the idea. People would say to her, they're going to do this to you. You need to. No, we're not going to do that. I'm sorry.
And what was Angel? Angel, and they were going to go through the tunnels and assassinate every single person at that Purge mass. That's what needs to happen. Those people are twisted and evil. They all.
What's funny is that it sort of ended up happening anyway.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, it would have been justifiable at least on two grounds to me. Number one, the NFAA revokes the exemption on politicians. So if something happens to them in this night, well, who the hell knows who caused it to happen? So there's number one
right there.
And number two, even if you take away the question of the exemption, to me, okay, so for 12 hours, anyone can do anything to anybody else that they want to. If she went through those tunnels with Angel and all the rest of them and happened to put a cap into somebody, to me, that's an act of self-defense. She knows they will try to kill her. Okay? If she does it first, that's an act of self-defense, at least to me.
She missed a prime moment, and I wish this had been in there. She missed a prime opportunity to go on social media live and say they just attempted to assassinate me. And after, and then this is the retaliation. She would have been lauded as a freaking hero and would have definitely won the election.
Oh,
well,
absolutely.
This was 2016 was the year, right? That this came out. So social media was still, it was there, but it wasn't like the live streaming thing wasn't so much.
Well, you just go on Twitter and put out a post.
That's true.
I mean, it worked for another politician back in 2016, but we'll just leave that alone.
It did.
But what was your take on that, Brentley? Do you think it was played well, or?
I thought it fit with the character, right? Like, she's supposed to be this almost like holier than thou, like icon of the anti-purge movement. And so for her to endorse the purge in any sort of way would be antithetical to her core self. So she couldn't really do it. Like, I expected her to be, kind of anti that even against her enemies, because that's sort of, it's like what she is in the film. She's supposed to represent this ideal and so she cannot, indulge in purging in any sort of way, even if it would help her in the long run politically, or potentially in the purge. Now, me myself in that position, I might have offed the mother effer, because
I probably would. I said, Angel,
I'm a little more practical.
I'm gonna look over here, and you go do that.
I'd be like, this is a great plan. How can I help? Like, we need to remove all these people, because it's basically like Drain the Swamp, Purge style.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I watched this with some friends. It just depends. And of course, he immediately said that, oh, she reminds me of Elizabeth Warren. I'm like, no, she does not remind me of Elizabeth Warren.
I mean, she's a blonde woman,
but other than that, I mean, she more reminds me of a Trump, even a Bernie Sanders. Even though I don't agree with his politics, I think he generally has a good nature and goodwill. She reminds me of a Tulsi Gabbard. Here in Tennessee, if you want to point to another Democrat that I think is actually a very good Democrat, it would be Phil Bredesen. It reminds me of those types of people, no matter what party they're in. She reminds me of a Reswami, not Elizabeth Warren.
No, she's not shrill enough for that.
Or like, Native American.
Yeah.
No, but I thought it was cute, and I it was true to the character, so I understand why she did it. Now, me in that position again, I
wouldn't have been that good. Even though she said that in this country we have to get back to the better angels of our character, and I agree with that, and we still need to do that today. But when you've got one party that plays dirty and one party that doesn't, you have to start playing a little dirty. You have to harvest ballots. You have to get out and go street to street and campaign. You have to play dirty in debates. You've got to do it.
And they also have like the entire media establishment sort of arraigned against them. And the GOP is boring. I mean, like, they're boring. They're corrupt. They've got this whole like Iraq war stink. Post 9/11, they were supposed to be they had a moment really in 9/11 to become the party of like compassionate conservatism. That was George Bush Jr.'s whole thing. He was a compassionate conservative. He won the election on that idea of being like a more liberal brand of conservatism. And then 9/11 happened. All of a sudden it was like, oh, now we're neocons. We're just going to launch endless wars. And ooh,
yeah.
So,
and I think kind of what we were discussing backstage, I think what we're seeing in Congress right now is the last gasp of both establishment Democrats and established Republicans. I think there's a new form of populist, both liberal and conservative, that are going to take over. And that's what we need. We need people that can work together.
Yeah, we need more people that have consciences and ideals and values getting involved. And I think we are seeing that. We've seen a lot more, especially since, the COOF and those policies that ticked off a lot of people. We've seen a lot more people running. There's we just interviewed a woman on Dangerous Rhetoric, name's Elizabeth Galushko. She's running as a Republican for the New York City Council on the Upper East Side. And she's just like, she couldn't, she was like, well, I can leave or I can try to get involved and fix this and make it better. And she's running to try to help and make it better. So
I heard of her, and I also can't think of her name, but the New York the representative from Staten Island. I've seen her on several local New York talk shows. She's awesome.
It's 𝗚liche Stefanik.
Yep.
Yeah, she's a house representative.
She's awesome. She's awesome.
Stefanik, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, Stefanik. And funny you bring up Elizabeth, because I'm doing an interview with her, not to do a shameless plug, but since you brought it up, I'm doing an interview with her Friday night to air on my channel next Tuesday.
Yeah,
and I have to thank Peter Feliciano for putting me on to her. Yep. So yeah.
Awesome. Everybody be sure to go over there and check it out. But yeah, back to the movie. This is why we call it Friends on Film. We're going to get off into all kinds of tangents here. But I kind of agree. I like the fact that she is that kind of upstanding person, because that's what we need in politics. But also you have to be willing, especially in a transition period, which is this is what we're looking at. You're transitioning from the NFFA to an independent. You're going to have to get your hands dirty, especially in a transition period. And she needed to be willing to do that. And then, of course, what happens? She gets captured by the NFFA. They're going to sacrifice her, and everybody has to go in and rescue her, which I thought that was an awesome scene.
Great finale.
Great finale where Dante
Agreed.
took out it was actually the sitting president was about to slit her throat, and he just headshot just right through the temple.
Yeah, that was when she had like the knife like right on her neck too, right?
Yeah, and first time I saw it, I was like, I could feel it. I could feel it because you could actually see it was a great practical effect.
Yeah, oh yeah.
See the skin
that thin trail of blood. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing about that church scene just before they rescued Roan, the homeless guy who was purged by the priest.
Yeah.
There was a really interesting exchange between the corrupt senator who was like emceeing the event and the priest, because after he plunges the knife in, he turns this. It's almost like, are you purged? It's almost like
homoerotic. It was homoerotic in a way.
I mean, there was like a weird vibe there, and I'm like, okay, this is interesting. It's like, wow.
What kind of release did you get?
The director quietly calling conservatives a bunch of closeted homos.
Yeah. I'm sure that was his.
That's what that is.
Yeah. Well, it's like, the question was which one of you was getting the release and how, but I'm telling you, I was just saying. But yeah, I mean, honestly, to me, it's scenes like that and others throughout the film, it just makes this movie so good. I mean, most people would say, oh, this is just a violent, gory film. No. This film is very, just like its predecessors, very well thought out. Very well directed, very well acted, and you come away from it. You get your friends together, like the three of us, and we're having discussions of like themes and elements and everything else, and you realize these guys actually know how to put together a good movie.
Yeah, it's a very thought-provoking movie, and when they finally get to the point where they've rescued Charlie, they're in the basement, they're rescuing everyone else that has been that they were going to sacrifice, and then that freaking priest in the blue robe. If Charlie had just let Angel dispose of him, Joe would not have died, because what happened? He tried to shoot Charlie, and Joe dove in front of her and took the bullets.
But it's such a beautiful ending for his character.
Yeah.
Like, it's a great death. Like, he gets to sacrifice himself to save her and thereby sort of the future of the country, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we lost Dante. I mean, it was a hell of a fight, but we lost Dante. But he got to go out. He crashed the car into a bunch of the neo-Nazis and killed a bunch of them, but not before they lit him up. But it was still a great closure for his character as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I love the way he did it. I got one move left. Give me cover. And I'm like, oh, crap. You knew something bad was about to happen. It's like, no, not to this guy. Come on.
But they have to do it. Right? They have to kill characters that you love, because that's what makes a good movie. I mean, Game of Thrones, like.
Yeah. If they hadn't killed Eddard Stark, it wouldn't have kicked off the entire thing. So
Exactly.
And I didn't like Ned Stark all that much. I thought he was kind of like Charlie Roan. He was a little bit too goody two shoes. He sucked at playing the Game of Thrones. He really did.
That's true. He did. He was bad at it.
Yeah, and Tywin Lannister was the best at it.
Tywin was a badass. I mean,
when you get introduced too.
Yeah.
When you get introduced to the guy and he's field dressing a deer he just went out in the woods and shot in front of his own son, and it's like, takes out internal organs, drops them in a bucket, and it's like, you are one bad mofo. You'll do anything, won't you?
Yeah.
It's like,
I saw an interview with the young man that plays Joffrey, and the little Irish actor. I cannot think of. He's a sweetheart in real life.
Gleason, I think is his last
name. Jack Gleason.
Jackie Gleason.
He said that that Tywin, because they asked him who did you get the most like tingly, because there was a ton of actors.
Sure.
And he said he named the guy that played Tywin, and he said he just commands respect when he walks in. I mean, he just tall and imposing. He said he would walk up to me, and he said I would just be like, "I love you," just.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely a great show. Absolutely a great show.
And of course, Lena Headey was also in this franchise as well.
In the
So,
first
Yep.
Purge, right? Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, and then of course, the fight between Leo and the head Nazi dude, that was awesome. It really
Yeah,
was. Very
that
well
was really good.
choreographed.
Their fight scene choreography is always just really good. It's one of the reasons I really like Leo's character and why it feels almost like Punisher. Well, the second one, the 𝗟𝗀𝗃, felt very Punisher.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we, of course, fast forward to 2 months later, and Charlie Rone sweeps the election. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like Reagan versus Mondale, 1984 when Reagan swept all but 2 states. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what it's like.
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. Yeah, the end of the film was very satisfying. I mean, there's Marcos, fixing up Joe's old deli, and Laney stopping in to check on him, just make sure everything's okay, and they're going to paint the walls and everything else. And you just feel like there's a sense of normalcy returning, not just to the city, but to the country itself.
Yep. And they again talk about waffles and pussy. They and then you hear the reports that NFFA supporters are starting to burn buildings and burn cars and attack police, and then it fades to black with some kick-ass soundtrack in this whole
Oh yeah, oh yeah. The music in the film is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
As with all the others as well.
Yep. And like you, Brian, had said backstage, where have we seen looting and rioting before? This seems very familiar.
Don't know about that one now. Have to think on that.
Oh, what's interesting is that they've got it, it's the other way around. Like the rightists are the ones that are like engaging in the looting and rioting and the purging.
Yeah.
Where in real life it's radical leftists that are engaged in that behavior.
Exactly. Yeah. Meatball and her company.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so ends the original Purge trilogy. It was followed 2 years later in 2018 with the first Purge. So we're going back in time with the next movie to see how this whole experiment happened. Interesting enough, the film stars Marissa Tomei, so it's a nice little treat. The fact they were able to get an actress of her caliber was not that the actor that played Leo wasn't great. Not that all these actors aren't great, but Blumhouse tends to go with more unknown actors in all of their films.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they get a big name, it's huge because they usually don't have the budget for that. And so when you see somebody like her in a movie, she's the hottest Aunt May ever. In the whole Spider-Man universe.
They made that whole joke the entire time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I give what's the young man that played Tom
Hardy. Holland.
Yeah, I give Tom Holland's like, boy, you must have had some really enjoyable days on set when you were working with her. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, I'm not saying, but I'm just saying.
He's a great little Spider-Man. I think he's probably my favorite. I did like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, though. I didn't like the scripts for those movies.
After the first one, they gave him crap to work with.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and the problem was it became like, Spider-Man and Mary Jane. Like the whole series was Spider-Man and Mary Jane. Like Mary Jane's supposed to be a foil for Peter Parker, not like the focus of his story. Like,
right.
So they kind of just like they overemphasized the relationship, and she became this like main plot in all of them, which it kind of works in the second one, but by the third one, it's just like they're cramming too much together, too many bad guys, too many plot points.
Yep.
It just didn't work for me.
And then after the first Purge, we will slingshot forward again to what happens after the Purge election year with the Forever Purge. We've already seen remnants of globalism with the Purge tour, so now we're going to see what really happens when it does go global. And it's a scary thought. It really is.
Yeah, no. And was it originally intended as a trilogy that they later expanded upon? Or
they had James DeMonaco had written 3 movies and was going to end it there, but every one of them made more money. Like every single one of them made more money, and
can't stop the gravy train.
And people wanted to
That's
know.
a good problem to have.
Yeah, and people wanted to know, how did we get here? It's just like, the first Purge, we're just here. How did we get here? And so they wanted to go back in time and show people how we got here. And then that question that you asked, Brentley, during the first one, and you too, Brian, what makes you think people that want to kill and maim and burn are going to stop when a whistle
siren
sounds,
goes off, right?
when a siren goes off? So that's what the Forever Purge took. Took that question and answered it.
Yeah, it seems like the next two movies we get to see how the trilogy begins and how it ends.
Exactly. And they, of course, the Forever Purge, they set it up for yet another one. I don't know if they'll ever do one, but it's, of course, left set up for another one.
Well, would you make 5 movies? Like, we might as well throw in a button for 6, just, in case.
Just in case. And then they made a 2-season TV show. We won't cover it on this channel, but if you have not seen it, it ran for 2 years on the USA Network and was just excellent. It fills in a lot of the purges we didn't get to see. Like the ones that we're covering, the one in the original Purge was 2022. This one was Anarchy was 2023. We got to see 2022 from Charlie Roan's point of view in the beginning of this movie, and then we fast forward to 2040. And then the Forever Purge was 2045, and then the Forever Purge takes us back to 2016 when it started. So, and then the Purge series, like each episode is a different year. So you tag onto a character from each Purge, and it's really interesting.
Yeah, that was the only thing I thought was a little tricky when I got like my footing and the timing. I was like, Leo does not look 20 years older.
No, I actually mentioned that in my summary. The original was 2023. He was probably in his late 20s, early 30s.
Late 20s, early 30s, arguably, yeah.
So now, 17 years later, he would be at least
late
almost
40s,
50.
Early 50s.
Almost 50, yeah. He looked great.
Vitamin supplements, working out.
Hey, hopefully I age like he does.
So, but yeah, I love this franchise, and I really appreciate you guys doing this with me. I know the fans are my subscribers are enjoying it. So, let's give our grade. I'm going to give the Purge election year the highest grade so far for the franchise. I'm going to give it a solid A.
Yeah, I can do the same. There's very little about this film that you can criticize. It's well put together. It's well written. It's well acted. The pacing is good. The action sequences are believable. All the themes are there from the other two films, and everything weaves together beautifully. It really does.
I'll go with an A- because of the phone having a play button instead of a pause button. How did they miss that? How do you miss that in the editing room? Like,
you contrarian curmudgeon.
I'm just how do you miss that though as a filmmaker? Like, film.
All right, that's true.
When you make a film, everything on screen, everything that you show your audience is 100% under your power of control. There is no excuse for making a mistake like that. Also, like, they could have aged Leo a bit to emphasize the 20-year difference, makeup, whatever, gray hair, gain a little weight, anything. I mean, just anything. It's just like, nah, it's like, he kind of basically looks like the same guy he was in the last movie. Like,
yeah. Well, I can understand Brentley. I'm a huge fan of the Friday the 13th franchise, and we're actually at the end of the month, I'm capping off October with a summary of the complete Friday the 13th franchise. Woo! And one of the reasons I don't like part 5, well, number one, it wasn't Jason, but I appreciate that they did something different. But there was a continuity error, just like kind of what Brentley's talking about, that just irked me. When the final girl was running from the fake Jason, she was slipping and sliding through the mud in the woods. She had the sweater tied around her neck. It was a yellow sweater, and it was there, then it was gone. Then it was there, then it was gone. Then it was, I'm just like, what kind of editing is that?
Sloppy editing. That's what it is. That's sloppy.
Very, very bad. Very, very bad.
Like, how many people you got watching this thing before you let it go? I mean, come on. Like, you gotta have at least a handful. Like,
and at least that was the 80s. They had to like edit real film. That was a lot harder but now it's digital. What the heck? There's no excuse. But all right, well, that is the Purge election year. You can find Brentley and Brian over on their respective YouTube channels, which will be linked right up here. And right down there. And until next time, keto and crime.